What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to YGOPD, your professional development, and you've asked for it. This was the top result on the poll, Magical Musketeer with Fiendsmith. I'm sure you've seen quite a lot of this with the pro players and the money match and the NAWCQ Worlds Points stuff. A lot of stuff has been floating around with that. My attraction for this list did not come from any of that. There was a guy on the Magical Musketeer Facebook group that made a public concept of this a few days before a lot of that came out to light. I want to shout out him. Name's Aaron. List was really cool. A lot of my inspiration came from that. This is a going first build, not a going second build. I don't own Link into the Vrains. I don't think it's worth it to play the going second build unless you own that, because it's quite a powerful card. Very cheap, obviously, just not something I have on me. But I wanted to showcase this list because I really do like it. I think the deck has a lot to still be explored. It kind of just feels like maybe the next evolution in a concept like Rescue Ace almost, because of kind of what the deck does. But overall, yeah, I'll go ahead and just show the main deck, the extra deck, and then I'll link the post in a pinned comment where the guy really talks about combos and different things like that. I want to give more credit where credit is due for that than just kind of showcase a hashed combo that someone else has already figured out. So we'll go ahead and get started. We have, for the muskets, 3 Caspar and 3 Starfire. These are your 2 best starters that you want to see at least one of in your opening hand, either going first or second. Of course, all the Musketeers are light fiends that are level 4 or lower, which you can obviously search off of Tract and just have a lot of, synergy with Requiem and all that kind of stuff. Caspar, when you activate a card in its column, adds a musket card from deck to hand, and then Starfire e-tellies 1 from deck to field. So the last 2 names are 1 Doc and 1, I have Kid Brave in here. There's a slot. I'm missing I think it's called Wild. It was just for some reason the one I didn't have. I didn't need. It was never really that relevant. Back when Musketeer was popular, it was these plus Docs and Kid Braves, and there wasn't many other names played, but Wild is one that you can also do that you probably should replace in this name. Doc adds a musket back from grave to hand when one's activated in its column, and Kid Brave pitches a musket to draw 2. Wild is like a mini Avarice. It takes 3 muskets and shuffles them back into the deck to help you recycle. So that's kind of probably just the better pick over Kid Brave. But you have 8 names in here. I believe this is either 40 or 42 cards. I'm not exactly sure, but that's it for the musket monsters. And then for the spell traps, we're only on 4, 1 cross dom. All the musket stuff, if you're unfamiliar with this, can be activated from the hand if you have a musket on field, kind of like Runic with Runic Fountain before that was a thing. This can be used in the damage step, makes an opponent's monster 0 and negates its effects. This pops a, I believe, face-up card on the field, not just monster. I could be wrong on that. It's been a minute since I double-checked that. And then 1 of the Dancing Needle, this is DD Crow for 3. And then 1 of the Last Stand, which is just a spell trap negate. So that's it for the musket package, a very small package. You don't need a ton because obviously the Fiendsmith bridges into this and vice versa. So for the rest of the deck, obviously we are on the Fiendsmith. Again, this is a going first build, and I'm just on 3 Engraver, 3 Tract, and 1 Lurie. You could play Sanct, you could cut this down. Obviously, a lot of people are on 3 Engraver and 1 Tract, but in this deck, the redundancy is not a big deal because you have an Engraver you can get in rotation and also a Tract to get one of your muskets, which is just powerful. You want to get your engine online, and you want multiple ways to get to that. I kind of prefer this over a card like Prosperity is just maxing out on this, so that's it for the Fiendsmith, obviously, in the main deck. And then just a couple, I guess I'll put this in here just as a random bridge because there's a couple other places where Sharvara fits that I want to talk about in a minute. But we do play the Unchained package. The way this build works is you cycle through Rage and Yama and then end on this to Reborn the Rage. You don't end on Escape. So this is kind of the one of quote-unquote brick that you are playing for the Unchained package. And then the one thing that I really fell in love with this deck, the way I built it for going first, is you have a lot of ways to dodge stuff. So you have 3 Dipsy Fiend, the 1 Sharvara that I kind of mentioned, as well as 3 Crossout and 1 Called By. So you got, I know it's kind of hard to see. I'll try to slide everything up just a bit because Facecam's a bit in the way here. But essentially you have 8 ways, right, to kind of help dodge stuff through like your musket searches and Requiem and all that kind of stuff, which I really do like. We actually went a little too high up there. There we go. But yeah, so these are all really, really incredible. Crossout and Called By doesn't really need a ton of explanation. Sharvara, again, for the Unchained package, plus the quick effect pop. The part where it probably needs the most touched on is Dipsy Fiend. I touched on this in a 2-minute tech. This card does a ton for decks that can afford the discard. You pitch a monster, or sorry, pitch a card from your hand, special this to the field as a different attribute other than like what you pitched. And most of the time, or I believe itself, it's one of the two, but you basically just don't call water, right? And you can either give it to yourself or you give it to your opponent. And if you give it to your opponent, you can reborn a monster that's a fiend that's not that. And it does lock you into fiends, but it's not a big deal. So you can pitch your musket, get your musket on board, and then give them this. So then you've turned off imperm and you've given them a body where you can use for a max search. So it just does a ton in this deck as a really powerful extender. It's also just another way to full Fiendsmith combo if you're doing M7 and stuff like that. Because you can just pitch a card, give this to yourself, and make it a light fiend, and then go into Requiem and keep going from there. So just a really cool card, and I think one of the better places to explore is in this deck, as well as probably Plunder Patrol is another really good one. So and the rest of the non-engine are just a couple defensive cards to go with the crossouts. We're just kind of on a general suite. 2 Nib, 2 Mourner, 2 Veiler, 2 Imperm, 2 Droll, and 2 Ash. Not much really special there. You can change this, again, go more board breakers, less hand traps. You could not play crossout. You could not play Dipsy Fiend if you don't want to and just go more all in on hand traps. But there's just a lot of room you can do with this. I just think the problem is like this deck is not great if you don't see a way to the Musketeer engine and a way to proc the Musketeer engine, which is why we're playing stuff like Dipsy Fiend and things like that. So that's the main deck. And then for the extra deck here, we'll start with the bigger links and then I think just work our way down. So 1 Appaloosa, that's the only link 4 we play. You could play an Access Code or something like that, but just a standard, you know, good piece to an end board if you don't want to do the Unchained route. And then for the Unchained, there's just a ton of 2s in here. 1 Rage, 1 Yama, 1 IP, 1 SP, of course, 1 of the Sequence for the Fiendsmith engine, 1 Closed Moon for the Fiendsmith engine, and 1 Muckracker as just a good general tool to help reborn and keep playing. Like getting your musket names back is just really, really powerful. So. And then the link 1s, obviously 1 Max and 1 of the Requiem. You could play more Max if you want. It does suck getting this hit with like a Bestial or something like that. But again, everything in the Fiendsmith extra that's Light Fiend, as you all know, is so recyclable that 1 is really all you need. But it's just really great to have a normal summon Light Fiend, make this into a Light Fiend, and then make Requiem. So you just have a lot of extra Light Fiends in the grave to work with to help make Sequence's effect a lot easier, right? And you don't have to go through as many hoops. So. And then the rest of the Fiendsmith package here, 1 Desiree, of course, 1 of the Lacrima, 1 of the Necro-equipped Princess, and then the 2 honorable mentions for the Exceeds that I'm on are just the 1 M7 and the 1 Caesar. You could play whatever you want. This deck doesn't really need Beatrice. It just doesn't because of how consistent it can be, and you don't really need to dump stuff and add it back like Snake Eye, like because the Fiendsmith stuff already bridges into everything for this deck because you're playing Light Fiends. But the M7 is just, again, nice to where if you just have 1 Light Fiend monster without ways to get extra names in the grave, it still lets you cycle through and get back Engraver and then continue to play from there. So that is Magical Musketeer Fiendsmith. This is a deck I really enjoy exploring right now. This is probably a deck I'll probably record some live duels with, so if you want to see some feature matches and things like that, let me know. But yeah, well, that said, that was this week's video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Later.